So, demographic transition theory. Actually, demographic transition theory is a transition between two stages. One stage is where the birth rate is high and according to the death rate is also high. It is a stage, and another stage is the birth rate is low and the death rate is also low. These two stages is two stages of demographic transition theory. The transition of these stages is known as demographic transition theory. Transition theory. Actually, demographic transition theory represent by four or so-called five stages, successive stages of population pyramid, which we have to learn or which we have to understand now. Here are the four or five successive stages of transition theory. Here is the stage number 1, stage number 2, 3, 4, and the so-called number 5 stage of demographic theory, demographic transition theory, of course. So in stage 1 is a stage where the birth rate is high and the death rate is also high. So we have to understand when it could happen. It could happen in underdeveloped country or in ancient time or past time, where we are not concerned about the birth rate. So there was a high production of population, as well as there was no medication, there was no treatment for the fatal diseases. So that time the death was very frequent, the death rate was high. So in that time, if there is birth rate is high, look at the graph. If there is birth rate is high, there will be lots of people whose age is actually who's a children, who's a baby. There will be lots of baby in that population. So in that graph we can see there is a huge area which actually represents that the children's number will be high because there was a high birth rate, and at the same time there is death rate. The death rate is also high. So if we look the age of the graph, we can see the sharp age. That means the number of adult people is low that time. Why the graph is that? Because birth rate is high, so there is a large area, and subsequently the death rate is high, so the adult number of people, which is shown by this sharp area, congested area, which means the number of adult people will be low because the death rate is high, so there will be less people in adult stage. So that is the first stage, and now we will understand the graphs very easily. Now the second condition or the second stage is a stage where the birth rate is high. Look, where is a large area, the birth rate is high, and because of invention of medication, because of invention of the protection from the fatal disease, the death rate is down. So if there is death rate is down, there will be much more people in the adult stage, in the adult age. So if we look, the area is larger than the previous one. We can see the area is larger than the previous one. So in the second stage, the birth rate is high, so the age of the number of children will be high and the death rate is low. At the same time, death rate is low, so the number of adult people will be low. So this is the second stage. Now we have to move to the third stage. This is a stage where the birth rate become low and the death rate become low. When it can happen? When it could happen? In the modern ages, we are taking different kind of contraception, and the women are become working person. The early marriage is now restricted, so the birth rate is fall down, and because of the advanced treatment, the death rate is also low. So in this graph, what we can see, because of low birth rate, the area become lower than the previous one. The area become low from the previous one, so we can say the birth rate is low, and the death rate become further low because of the further advancement in the medical treatment. The adult number of people is also raised. As we can see, the area is larger than the previous one. So that is the stage 3. And last of all, what we can see, that the advanced world is preferring much more less birth rate and much more less death rate. So as a result, look, in this stage the death rate will be very low, so the number of adult people will be very high. The area is much larger than the previous one because of the decrease in the death rate, and the birth rate will be decreases, so the birth rate will be very much decreases than the previous one. So the area of children, the area of the people whose age are very little, suppose 5, 10, the area is very small, which refers that there will be low child rate, low birth rate. So actually, from the transition from high birth rate to high death rate to low birth rate to low death rate is actually a transition of population structure or population pyramid, which is denoted by this graphical representation, and this representation or these successive stages is known by a theory, and this theory is nothing but the demographic transition theories. And these four stages is actually the demographic transition theory. Now, what I was talking about, the so-called or the speculation stages of demographic theory. So this is actually it is a hypothesis by the Malthus demographic theory. So in this stage, what happened is nothing happened when actually whatever stages we are living, whatever stages, population stages we are in, the number of people in the world is increasing, no doubt. Undoubtedly, the number of people in the world is increasing. So at a time when the number of people will be very, very high, but the resources actually remain the same. So there will be shortage. There will be shortage of resources. Then, according to Malthus, there will be natural calamities to settle down this condition. So in that time, actually, there will be destruction. there will be destruction in the population size, in the population structure as well. So lots of people will be died, so the death rate will be very high, so the area become much smaller, which represents that there will be less number of adult people, and the number of birth will also be decreases, so the area become much more smaller because the birth rate will be decreases. Actually, it is a hypothesis when there will be much more people, but the resources will be the same, and there will be destruction. These 5 stages, or synchronizingly we can say these 4 stages, is actually represents a structure, a transition between high death rate to high birth rate, and high death rate to low birth rate to low death rate, and this is known as demographic transition theory. Thanks to all.